Okay, we've got a full house here and we are going to get started with the April 24th, 2025 Lexington Planning Commission meeting. So the first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have anybody who would like to make an alteration of any sort? And I'll take a motion in a second.
I motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed, and motion carries unanimously. And next item is approval of the minutes from the April 10th meeting of the Planning Commission. Oopsie, sorry. They looked very thorough to me. Does anybody have anything that they needed to make note of in here? Then I'll take a motion in a second on that as well.
I move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? And the motion carries unanimously. Next item is citizens' comments on matters that are not on the agenda. If there's anybody in our audience, I welcome you to come up to the podium there and state your name and address. And seeing as nobody is coming up, we will close that section of the agenda and move on to new business. So the first item of new business is ECCOA 2025-05, an application by Whitney Dunn for approval of a certificate of appropriateness for a new sign for the Evolve Hair Studio at 178 Walker Street, tax map number 30-1-15, owned by Andorra Properties LLC. Arnie, do we have a staff report?
Indeed, and good evening, everyone. We do have a request for a new door sign for Evolve Hair Studio at 170 Walker Street. Again, it's in the C2 zoning district and in your entrance corridor overlay. The request is for a 19-inch by 8-inch vinyl decal to be applied to the entry door glass. Feature the business logo in white on a translucent background. Proposed sign graphics are included in your application, and all of the existing signs will be removed. You see the map there on the bottom of the page for the Summit Square Shopping Center, and the little star where Whitney's location is off to the side. They're facing Walker Street. We did on your next page include your future land use map in case that's helpful as requested previously. And then a photograph of the existing conditions. You see the Studio 2 hair salon sign, wall sign that will be removed. And Whitney's proposing a sign on the door glass. The door there is open, but it'll go vinyl sign on the door. In your page on page 9 of your overall packet, we do have the applicable sign regulations as well as the applicable entrance corridor regulations. And the very bottom there, the 3 criteria in the entrance corridor that relate to signage. Staff does find the proposed improvements meet the zoning criteria. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Arnie?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understood right. So there's the door decal, and then there's the one right above as shown on page 8. Just those 2 signs.
On page 8, that's the old studio name, so that one's going to be removed. So the only sign that will be on the door. Correct.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
I'm glad to see the overlay. So thank you.
Yes, this was helpful. Yeah. Okay, any other questions for Arnie? Okay, is our applicant here? And would you like to make a statement? So come on up to the microphone and state your name and address for the record, please.
Whitney Dunn and 178 Walker Street, owner of Evolve Hair Studio. And both signs have been removed already.
Okay, great. Anybody have any questions? All right, thank you so much for coming tonight. All right, then we'll close. Let's see, and we'll open it up for public comment. Anybody in the public want to make a comment about this? Okay, closing public comment. Is there any discussion by commission? Anybody have any thoughts or concerns? I agree that it's very helpful to have this map. So thank you for that. So it looks like the sign is it's pretty small in terms of 19 by 18. So anybody? All right, so if there's no
Yeah.
no discussion, then a motion and a
I think it's a nice looking sign. It's
Yeah.
modern and clean lines and
Agreed.
sharp.
Yes.
Move to approve entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness application ECCOA 2025-05 for new signage for Evolve Hair Studio at 178 Walker Street as proposed by the applicant.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Congratulations. Okay, moving on to the next item. We have a conditional use permit 2025-04. This is an application by Rihanna Schleif to amend the conditional use permit allowing Blue Ridge Outdoor School, an existing daycare center to operate in a portion of Grace Episcopal Church at 123 West Washington Street, tax map number 16-3-C as in cat. Arnie, do we have a staff report?
Indeed, we do have a request to amend a conditional use permit that allows the Blue Ridge Outdoor School, which is an existing daycare center, to operate in the Jonathan Daniels Community Room, the Grace Episcopal Church, located in the R1 General Zoning District. The location map there shows the church location. Next page, you see the entryway sort of in between the two church buildings, but that is the entryway towards the back where the drop off would occur, and it's a loop drive. Last year in July, council approved a conditional use permit for a daycare center at the Grace Episcopal Church. That approval was made with conditions that limited the number of students to 13 in total and limited the hours of operation to between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. Rihanna is the owner of the Blue Ridge Outdoor School, and she wishes to expand the operation beginning in August of this year. And she's requesting the conditional use permit be amended to allow the school to operate between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. with a maximum of 20 students and 4 adult staff. We provide on the bottom of the page there, which is page 15 of your overall packet, the R1 zoning district, sort of the intent of that. Going over to the next page, the definition of daycare center. And as always, we provide you with the conditions for issuance of a conditional use permit. So those are the criteria that you're very familiar with all conditional use permits. Going over onto the following page on page 17, we provide a staff recommendation, which is a recommendation for approval, mind you, but they took the 4 conditions that are approved currently for 13 students and amended that. And you see that in the strike through and underline, going from 13 students in condition number 1 to 20 students. And in condition number 2, simply amending the hours of operation to go a little bit earlier and a little bit later those days. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Arnie? Okay, so thank you, Arnie. Does the applicant have a statement? If you'll state your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Rihanna Schleif, and I'm the owner and director of Blue Ridge Outdoor School. And we had a very good year this year, and we've received a lot of requests to take on more students, especially for 2 or 3 day a week option. And so that is what the second class would be primarily used for, is for us 2 and 3 day choice for the parents, because currently we're just offering 5 day full time. So the second class would be the more flexible schedule, in addition to 2 more staff members that would be in charge of that class. Any questions?
Questions?
Just ask one on drop off and pick up. I'm glad you're expanding. That's great
Yeah.
that there's definitely a demand for daycare, and I'm glad that people are coming to y'all. Can you just explain your drop off and pick up?
Yes, so
Procedure.
currently the van gets parked in front of Grace Episcopal on that main street on East Washington, and the parents park in the church parking lot, or they park on the street But just by chance, we have about 3 parents that are WNL staff. So they're walking their kid. They don't have to park or anything. So it's been really convenient. And we do have 2 local parents that like to walk to the church as well. So parking really hasn't been too much of an issue for us this year. But yeah, they do drop off at that red door, or they just walk their kid to the bus that we have, and then loop around.
So
Yes.
tell me what the bus is going to be used for.
Yep.
I know you said to take them over to Woods Creek, for example, or
Yep.
Natural Bridge, but where else? I mean, is it also going to be used for anything else?
No, we use the church as well for, like, we have music lessons and we have a chapel service. And then the van is used to go to the state parks, like Natural Bridge State Park, and we go to Thunder Bridge and Lake Robertson. And then we will walk to the library sometimes and go to Boxerwood. They have preschool programs. So yeah, we kind of use it a couple times throughout the week to go to our different locations, outdoor locations, in addition to Lexington. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Okay.
And your 2 and 3 day programs, they're going to be, you're going to have how many kids in that classroom, I guess, is the first
Yeah,
question.
we have a limit of 10 kids on a given day.
Okay.
So Monday's class may have 8, where Tuesday's class might have 10, but it's usually different. I'm assuming it's going to be different kids. Right now we have about 5 kids that signed up for 2 days and 4 kids that would like the 3-day program. So it would be no more than 10 on a given day still.
And how many in your other classroom then?
10.
10.
It's just
So
10, yeah.
10 and
The
so
van
10 per
limit, the
classroom.
van limits us to 10. Like, we don't take more than that. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Nice. So you technically could serve how many families? More than 10 families.
we could
is that right?
potentially, if we were at full capacity, it would be 30 families.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that. Any other questions?
This is probably a little more, I don't know, just out of curiosity.
Sure.
Is the name right now Blue Ridge Outdoor School?
Yes, that's
Oh.
how we advertise, as Blue
Okay.
Ridge Outdoor School. Yeah,
Okay. Didn't catch that the last time.
that's okay. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay. Do we have any public comment? Anybody here who wants to come up and make a statement about this particular item? If not, we'll close public comment and open commission discussion. Any thoughts?
I think it's great to expand the time, because that seems to be one of the things, is it's not necessarily working hours for other programs. So I think that's excellent. I do have a question about, which I probably should have asked this 30 seconds ago. If it's 20 students max and it's in that room, which has 20 occupancy, wouldn't that be like 18 kids and 2 adults? Is that what that 20 OCC?
Oh, I think that's yes, I
I
think,
don't know who it's
Oh,
for.
well,
necessarily.
That's,
Go ahead.
it's 2 different rooms.
Oh, it's 2 different rooms?
So
Okay.
they're,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
One is like, right now it's currently used as like a music setup, and the other one's more preschool setup, but we use both rooms. Yeah.
That makes it, that was literally my only question. I think this is great. I think it's awesome.
and since you're up, I do have another question, and it's about the ending time, the
Sure.
5 o'clock. Is that, are the parents who are working, is that late enough for them?
It is, like, we actually end up at Waddell Elementary at 5:30. So we potentially could be in the building for after school, like when we have snack or something like that, but we're always gone by 4:30 at the latest. So 5 o'clock was just kind of the wiggle room if we ever had a parent that wanted to pick up there at that time.
Mhm.
But we usually end at Waddell, since our after school, which is separate, that is at Waddell. So
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. Any other commission discussion thoughts or? So I do have a few, these are really more nitpicky grammar things in the conditions. In the first item, it doesn't seem to me that you need a comma after the word occupancy in the 3rd line. It makes it read a little oddly. So in no case shall the number of students be allowed to exceed the maximum occupancy or limits established. I don't think that needs a comma. And I think it sort of changes although John, maybe you can speak to that better.
On the spot.
Um, so if you wouldn't mind taking the comma out, that would,
If you all, whatever the motion is, if that could just be clarified in the
Okay.
motion, that'd be great.
the next item is in number 3. The building will be at all times be used. So we've got an extra B. I think I would take out the first one.
That's right.
And I believe that also does not need the comma after the word used. The building will be used, will at all times be used in full conformance with the current adopted Virginia Unified Statewide Building Code and the current, et cetera, does not need a comma. Those are the only comments that I had on this. Anybody else? Then I think a
Seems great.
motion that includes those changes.
I move to approve conditional use permit CUP 2025-04 for a daycare center at 123 West Washington Street as proposed by the applicant and including the minor typographical changes just read into the record and with the staff recommended conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, and the motion carries unanimously. Congratulations. Thank you for coming in. Moving on to zoning ordinance amendment 2025-02 mini warehouses. All right, so now we have to get through the page. We are on page 31. Do we have a staff report?
We do. We have gone through this and massaged the wording a little bit each time. So this is sort of the final draft that has now been advertised for a public hearing. So this is your first public hearing on this particular item. So I am going to go a little bit into depth. Many warehouses are only allowed currently as a conditional use in the C2 zoning district, and there may be a benefit to developing use and design standards. And that is what we have come up with for this particular public hearing are the use and design standards. On the middle of page 31, just to provide you with existing language, and we muddled that up a little bit. So the existing definition is a building design for a mini warehouse, I should say. So the definition is a building designed to provide rental storage space and cubicles where each cubicle has a maximum floor area of 400 square feet and the rest of that. So the multi-story portion is what we're adding. And I should have probably left that out there and then provided you with a whole new changed definition further down, just to make that clear. And you have the existing use matrix there where it is only a conditional use currently. The mini warehouse use is only a conditional use in the C2 zoning district. And then you all had really had the recommendation, and I should have put that into a proposed motion, but I have that for you and I'll read that in the record at the end of this. But the recommendation from Planning Commission, at least initially, was to not allow these to prohibit mini warehouses in Lexington, but develop use and design standards just in case council wanted to continue with conditional use permit for the C2 zoning district for mini warehouse. So we did go through and develop on page 32, everything that's in red there. So these are all new use and design standards for mini warehouse. Some of those talk about the facilities not having outdoor storage, not having auctions or servicing motor vehicles in them or storing flammable items, providing contact information that's readily available for the person who is in control of the property, not allowing tenant identification signs for advertising. So you can't rent one of these units, do your automobile repair job, commercial activity in there, and then have a sign to boot. So all those things would not be allowed. There are accommodations for a living manager allowed, at least if it was large enough to accommodate one. And then we are requiring that it be a multi-story structure, both in F and also in the definition that is proposed to be changed. And then we get into some of the design items, such as it looking more like a multi-story building, either like a commercial or office building or residential building. But the idea is to prevent just huge blank walls on a multi-story building, because that would really not fit in anywhere in Lexington. And then flipping over, I think the last thing beyond design or including design is also a little bit about materials. Primary materials shall include, but are not limited to brick or masonry veneer, stone, textured concrete block, fiber cement panel siding. So that's the body of what we're trying to accomplish as far as using design standards. Again, those standards, along with a change in the definition to add the multi-story portion, is what those are the changes that are proposed. Happy to answer any questions on those.
Any questions? Okay. So thank you, Arnie, for that report. Is there any public comment on this issue? We'll open the floor for public comment and close it right back up for lack of public comment. And we'll go on to commission discussion. Any thoughts? We've already seen this. This is this third time that we've seen this, and it looks like all of our previous comments have been entered into this. So anybody have other things? Yeah.
I'll just make a comment because I missed, I think, 1 or 2 meetings where we discussed this. I think it looks great. I think it'll be, if we adopt these use and design standards, it'd be a high quality facility. I know there's a inclination to not allow them overall, but we've already been allowing them and we haven't had any. Now that we've made the standard even higher, I just think if somebody were to do it, it would be a nice facility. I don't think we're going to get too many or any at all based on past history, but I really don't see a problem with adopting the use and design standards, but I don't feel all that strongly either if the rest of planning commission doesn't want to allow the use.
Okay. So
Taking your cues from what you had mentioned earlier about not recommending it, I do have, and I could read aloud the suggested motion, since I did not provide that in your packet, if you like.
okay, let's see. Hang on. I'm gonna write it down.
I move to recommend mini warehouses be prohibited in Lexington. However, if city council determines the mini warehouse use should continue to be allowed conditionally in the C2 zoning district, the planning commission recommendation is to adopt the staff recommended use and design standards enumerated in this report.
That sounds like a well stated. So does anybody have any other thoughts, concerns? Are we still in favor of prohibiting them? Okay. Then I don't know, maybe somebody wants to borrow Arnie's words, unless they have a really good memory.
Motion could just be to make the recommendation as already read into the record, if you want to do it that way.
Okay. Anybody?
I motion to make the recommendation as already stated in the record for mini warehouses.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries.
Nice work, team.
Do we have an idea when city council is going to look at that?
The earliest would be in 1 month's time because of advertising requirements. So tomorrow, as an example, I would check with the city clerk to see if there's a room available on that agenda, not their next agenda, because I can't meet the advertising requirements for the next meeting, but the one that's following. And then if there's time on that one, then we'll advertise for that second one in May.
Okay,
Second meeting in May. Okay.
great. Thank you. All right. last item on the agenda is the review of the transportation chapter of the comp plan, which is on our very last page of our packet. And we'll just go down the list. The first three items are under accessibility and diversity, and those are all ongoing. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts about any of those that they would like to? Okay, I'm going to move on to the sustainable economy, TR 2.1. Anybody? This is develop and implement design requirements. So that is something that the planning commission would do. Yes? Is that correct, Arnie? TR 2.1.
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about design standards, but those are something else for construction. But yes, this is like such as interparcel connections and limitations on curb cuts. A great example of that would be when the entrance corridor, when we go through some of the entrance corridor overlay regulations, I think we will be talking about interparcel interconnections and whatnot.
Right.
So yes,
So that's something that we will be addressing,
likely.
but not yet.
On TR 2.3, do I remember correctly? Didn't we do something with,
Yes.
We did.
I have that too. Don't we do this?
we had a discussion, was it last year? Was it this year? About
Yeah.
sort of charging stations on personal property and rules about that, right? I don't know that that would necessarily rise to the standard of ongoing here, or
We did allow them because we changed gas station to a fueling station
was that.
that allowed
Right.
and the individual
Yeah.
and even some allowance for them to be on public property if the city ever wanted to put a
Right.
charging post.
Right. So
I
I-
guess I was thinking
Yeah.
more here of like an actual construction of a brand new,
Yeah.
which we don't really have, but I think you're correct on 2.3 there.
Yep. So that one looks like it needs to be ongoing. And then going back to 2.2, require identification and mitigation of initial and long-term transportation impacts associated with proposed developments. I just have a question of how would that happen? What would that look like?
I think actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we may have that on a scale, a smaller scale. But if you recall when W&L came through the campus master plan amendment, and I can't remember if there was some pressure or request, or if they had this in their initial request. But for at least their larger capital projects, they have to provide us with an updated transportation plan. What's the right thing called? Traffic improvement study or whatever that's called.
Mhm.
So there is actually the requirement, and we will probably see that before too terribly long when they come in for the early fielding replacement, because I think that's one of the 2 or 3 where they have to come in and update their traffic something analysis. So I think does that sort of answer the question in the sense that if we have a project that's large enough, quote unquote, then they have to tell us what the impacts from that development are on our transportation system.
So my understanding was that the proposed project on Spotswood did not trigger any kind of a traffic study. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm going from memory. If I recall correctly, the traffic that was generated by those 62 or 63 apartments, once you take that number of apartments, I think even by bedrooms, if I remember correctly, through the transportation engineer manual,
Yeah.
it didn't even come within half or maybe a third of the threshold. There's always a threshold. If you meet the threshold, then you should go, or it's recommended you to go do a traffic impact analysis. But if you don't meet the threshold, then you really don't have to. But those recommendations, not really things that we've adopted specifically, but we didn't even come at I believe it was a third of the way to that threshold, maybe a half, but nowhere close to requiring a traffic impact analysis for
Right.
the 60 some apartments on Spotswood.
And but the early fielding would.
Well, in the sense that they either offered it and we accepted it, or it was required of them. So they have that in their campus master plan approval list of conditions, where they will be in, they already have done one before those 6 or 7 projects came in as they're coming along. But what they committed to do is when each of those projects come up for construction, they will go and update their impact analysis.
Right.
So that happened with the Williams School, I'm gonna call it the addition, but that new building. And it will happen again, at least for early fielding. And I can't remember which of the other ones where they committed specifically to updating that traffic impact analysis.
Okay. So I'm going to say that since we don't require identification and mitigation with proposed developments, I feel like we can't actually do that ongoing. I mean, does anybody else see that? I would just say that unless that language got changed to of a certain, to have a size associated with it, we're clearly not requiring it with just sort of general every proposed development.
And I don't think we should. I mean, unless it has to be a large proposal to require it. Otherwise, I think that's just burdensome.
Well, and that's probably a topic for another day.
Yeah.
but because I think that they can traffic studies can certainly help people understand things better. And in any case, I was just curious about how we would do that. So we would have to write that into our requirements within. Is that correct? If we were, in order to require this is something that would have to get written into what? Zoning ordinance, or?
I think that would typically be in our construction standards. So if we had a full, and that's another one of the items in previously listed, I can't remember which chapter, but that's really expensive to have a full set of construction standards when we really don't have much development.
Yeah.
If you're up in Fairfax or somewhere, yeah, you need a full set of construction standards so everybody knows that the radius on a curb downtown is whatever the radius is, and no more or less. But this, I think it would be in those construction standards most likely, but this also doesn't preclude us from following general best practices. As I mentioned, when the Spotswood, or when you acquired Spotswood as an example, but we went and looked at what the standards are, and we simply didn't meet the threshold, or didn't come anywhere close to meeting the threshold for that. So just because we don't identify it and require it and include it in construction documents doesn't mean we wouldn't be following those general standards anyway.
Does it hurt to leave it in?
I don't think so.
You mean this item?
Yes.
I just think that it would be, I mean, I don't think it hurts to leave it in, but I don't think that we're gonna ever,
You never know.
unless we change, the requirements, I don't think we're ever gonna get that colored in. So that, which says to me that that's a bigger discussion for another day. We'll just leave it for now.
I think when we did the comprehensive plan, the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission actually wrote the transportation section, and a lot of these are sort of cut and paste from what they recommend for everybody. So and I think that one in particular is more pertinent to a larger locality than
Yes, I would say so. Yeah. Okay, let's move on to section 3, 3.1. Anybody have any thoughts?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, is this, are we talking about just city funded projects here? Because of course, if we're talking about federally or state funded projects, then of course, Section 106 National Historic Preservation Act, NEPA, other laws will come into play and require these sorts of considerations, wouldn't they?
Oh,
Yeah.
hang on.
I think you're absolutely correct that if there's federal funding involved in certain situations, there will be requirements for the 106 Historic Preservation Review and whatever else
Right.
may come along with that. So this is throughout the entire construction process. And again, if there's federal money involved, then we would have to do it anyway.
And I imagine there's counterpart state laws and regulations as well. But is it real that the city does not take these into consideration as yet? These
Well,
sorts
I'm
of
at
things?
a little bit of a disadvantage perhaps since I'm not the city engineer or in the public works department. And I can't remember when we had the last go through a 106 review, and that may have been for George Point Park. But perhaps picking up on the observation that this was from the PDC, we're also not building new roads.
Right.
So we're amending something, but we're not going out and building new subdivisions and new roads. And so again, for our scale, we would have to follow it when we have the federal money. That's a requirement, not a choice.
I can imagine a case where sidewalk, streetscape was going to be changed, and that could be city funded, and you could pick a entirely inappropriate material for the historic character of the city for that. Surely that would come into play. That's sort of a consideration. I guess I'm saying I can't believe that this isn't marked as ongoing.
Because again, it's required. And then if it's something downtown historic, then it's going to be a material that the ARB is going to have some input on as
Right.
well.
Right.
So then that sounds like it should be.
I think it should be. Yeah.
All right, so that's 3.1. Ongoing. Okay, how about 3.2? Thank you, Charlie. 3.2, develop streetscape standards for entrance corridors, such as East and West Nelson, North and South Main. And this is something that we are in fact going to be picking up relatively soon. But not yet.
Is it on our sort of plan or project for this year, or?
It is, yeah.
Entrance cores in general, it sort of perhaps begs the question, what is streetscape standards? To what detail are we going to get into? That hasn't really been determined on our entrance corridor overlay. Are we just going to be talking about what can happen in the public way and also requiring cross connections and that kind of thing? Or are we going to be developing, in my opinion, this means somewhat detailed standards for the streetscape, including not green space, but beauty space along the streets, sidewalks, plantings. So how much into the design are we going to get? I think that's still to be determined.
I would agree it's yet to be determined, but I think that if we're dealing with entrance corridors, that's exactly the kind of thing that we do want to be talking about, is because otherwise we're just talking about buildings, and the buildings are, yeah, well, anyway, so I would say, again, not yet, but that's likely to be something that we'll talk about.
It'll be interesting to see how North Main Street turns out, because that could help
Right.
us set a standard.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Okay, 3.3, implement wayfinding for key gateways, corridors, intersections, and parking areas. So this is signs. Is there anything else? And do we not have any? I mean, don't we have some of this? Or is this something like a whole new, was the idea that we would develop an entirely new set of wayfinding?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
the intent I can't recall specifically, but just a little bit of history. Before I came here 9 years ago, we did go after grant funding and had a complete wayfinding plan completed by Fraser and Associates. And that's not just for us, but BV and Rockridge. So they were all complementary. You knew when you were in one jurisdiction because of the colors, but they were all complementary. Then the next step was to go to VDOT and apply for a grant. But as soon as I understand it, as the planning was done, the plan was adopted for that wayfinding plan, then the funding went away. So we actually have a wayfinding plan on the shelf.
We also run into the problem of, then we want to have a sign diet. So we'll do some wayfinding, but then we'll realize, we've got too many signs, and then try to reduce the number of signs.
Right, cull. All right, so that's something that is not implemented. So we can't we can't click off ongoing, but it sounds like it's something that if there was somebody who was paying attention to, who it was on the radar, I mean, that one of these grant opportunities came up. It's just, I don't know how often that happens. Do you have a sense of that? I mean,
Again, as I understand it, about 10 years ago, that funding went away, and I'm not aware of any funding
Yeah.
that is for the
Right.
same type of project that has been implemented.
okay. Anybody else have any thoughts about that one? Okay. Last one is 3.4, create an interconnected on-street network of pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure to link neighborhoods to downtown parks. Downtown parks and other historic and green infrastructure amenities, target bicycle and pedestrian connection and corridor improvements along neighborhood and civic corridors. Is this not what our sharrows do?
What?
Sharrows, the bike lanes that are in the street on Main Street, and certainly that's going to be happening on North Main, right?
Right.
So I would propose shading that one in as ongoing. All right, any other thoughts on that one? Move on to 4.1, citizen engagement. Ensure fairness and equity and community engagement in the transportation planning process and its nexus with housing, services, health, safety, and livelihood needs of all citizens and groups. Anyone? Is this related to, is this not what happened with the green infrastructure? Didn't you all engage? That was just right before I came on, so.
But I can't recall how much of that was planning necessarily. Transportation, sorry.
Well,
Yeah,
but green, I mean, there was the bike and the bike and pedestrian plan as well. I mean, were there not public meetings held?
we did hold a public hearing for the bike and pedestrian plan, but this is also perhaps a little bit more involved than this, just that the way I read it, ensure fairness and equity and community engagement so that, there's a lot there. And I'm not 100% sure we did all that for the bike ped plan by holding a public hearing. Again, it depends on how you read it.
Well, community engagement. I guess I would propose that perhaps we haven't done everything in it, but it is something that we have engaged part of anyway. Does
Okay.
anybody else have thoughts about that?
I agree. And with the North Main Street project, there was an open house
Right.
for people to comment. I mean, I think
Right.
some ways, as long as we make sure we're targeting all the neighborhoods to make sure that they're connected and then we allow for public comment, I don't know that there's a whole lot more we can do than that.
Right. So it sounds like we're all okay with setting that we're doing that one. All right, next one, TR 5.1 is already ongoing. TR 5.2, share planning and costs with other jurisdictions when the city road improvements have mutual benefits. Is that what happened on Main Street at all?
That's
No.
80-20. I think it's sort of our contribution. If I remember correctly, is 20%, and then that's the rest of it state. So I'm not sure of any other jurisdiction sharing costs.
Okay. Okay, so, and then the last one is, sorry, anybody else on 5.2?
You know, it'd be nice to have that done, but
Yeah.
I can't think of anywhere that's been done.
No. All right, so 5.3, support regional efforts to increase ride sharing, carpooling, transit, telecommuting, and public transportation. This made me think about public transportation. So we do have the Maury, what is that bus called? Right. And then we've got Rats and we've got the Virginia Breeze bus stop. And I mean, it's not technically in Lexington, but
guess when I was reading this, I didn't think about our sort of financial contributions to those efforts. So I think you could make an argument that you support that and it's ongoing.
Yeah. And I'm not quite sure what the city can do about carpooling. But telecommuting, we've certainly, don't we have some those towers? There must be like internet facilities.
Yeah, we participate in RANA, the Rockbridge Area Network Authority, which provides broadband throughout our Rockbridge, Buena Vista, and the county at
Right.
Lexington.
So I would say that we do that. And that concludes that section. Wow. We just are going straight on through. This is great. All right. Do we have a zoning and planning report?
We do. There's a zoning ordinance amendment I think I may have mentioned already, filed that will be filed on behalf of the owner of the Gin Hotel. They have a canopy out in front of the hotel entrance and they would like to put letters, I can't remember, 10-inch or 12-inch letters that are internally lit. We don't currently allow those. So we've been working with an attorney that they have hired to draft some new standards for canopy signs. And because it's in the historic district, we're going to actually present those first to the ARB at their next meeting. And because the applicant is not available in May, I think you wouldn't, or in June.
The first.
So you wouldn't see this until June at the earliest. And there's some minor modifications to the sign standards in the C1 zoning district is basically the gist of it.
Is it possible to require like a warm light instead of, how some LEDs have very cold light? Seems like warm light would go a long way towards making it more appropriate downtown or
We
anywhere
do
in
not
town.
currently have a degree Kelvin requirement for 2,700 versus 5,000. So that's something that would have to be developed. So, or maybe added to what the proposal is when it comes before you.
Okay. Thank you.
So again, that's going to go to the ARB for their review to make them aware of that proposal in draft form. It has not been submitted yet formally to us, but once it is, we'll bring that to you for your review as a public hearing. Because again, that's a zoning text amendment. Staff is continuing to develop changes to the short-term rental use and design standards in response to the recent spot inspections that were mentioned previously at your last meeting. And a draft will be included in your next meeting agenda. We do have a sign and entrance corridor along Waddell for your next meeting. And the Threshold Housing Commission continues to develop the homeowner helper program that is designed to promote safe and affordable housing in collaboration with the Economic Development Authority. That is a program the city manager had in a previous jurisdiction where he worked, and council has already set aside funding for that. So that is a program that we are standing up. And it'll take a few months certainly to do that. But again, that's really with Threshold and the Economic Development Authority. And similarly, a new program that is being stood up is a sprinkler incentive program. The application has been finalized. The application is on the fire marshal's webpage and on the EDA's webpage, and a brochure is available. Additionally, materials, all those things were mailed to all of the downtown property owners within the last few weeks. So within the last week, so all the downtown property owners are now or should be notified and knowledgeable of this new sprinkler incentive program. As I understand, the main feature that, or some of the main features are to make our building safer downtown. So if you have a fire starting one, it's not going to go through every building on that block. So it's about safety, but it's also about energizing the upper floors because we have a lot of vacant upper floors. And one of the biggest impediments to unlocking those is the life safety requirements, and sprinklers can certainly help with that. That's all I have for our planning and zoning report.
Okay, thank you, Arnie. Any questions for Arnie? All right, thank you so much. City council report.
Sure. City council met last Thursday. There were two items I thought you might be interested in. Overall, it was a pretty short meeting. That tomorrow the city will celebrate Arbor Day and will plant the arborist will plant 5 dogwoods at Oak Grove Cemetery at 11 a.m. if you're interested in participating in that. And the Courthouse Square project, that'll start in June. And the first step of it will be to move the Veterans Memorial, shift it over to the left from where it is right now. So we should start seeing some progress there. And that's all I have.
When is that happening again?
Early June is it's expected to start. Right after Veterans Day, Memorial Day, sorry, Memorial Day.
Right. All right, well, we're at the end. I think we need a motion and a second.
Move adjournment.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. Arnie, Kate, thank you very much. All your prep work.